Welcome, everybody, to Bill Condon and Matt McGregor's Industrial Advisors podcast. Today, we're going to cover two real main things, and then we're going to touch on a third thing as well. But we're going to start with the e-commerce boom and how that's impacting industrial real estate. We're also going to talk about two really good innovations and technologies that are really impacting the supply chain and what that looks like moving forward. And kind of finally, we'll touch on one geopolitical issue as well. Everyone's talking about e-commerce, and certainly e-commerce is a trend that isn't going anywhere. In fact, I believe last year we hit an e-commerce level that we weren't supposed to get to until 2025. So let's, Matt, start with that. I know you are kind of an e-commerce geek now, and kind of
we all are now.
Yes, well, every household is using it now, right?
Exactly.
So let's start there and talk about e-commerce and the impact it's having.
For sure. Let's take a look back to see where we've come from, and then maybe look at where we're going. So in 2009, e-commerce was 5% of all total retail sales. At the beginning of Q1, pre-COVID, 2020, 11 years later, it had only grown to 15%. That's a 1.5% annual growth rate over a decade. So not substantial. Certainly less than I would have thought. Okay, 2 quarters later, 2020, e-commerce through COVID had leapfrogged to 35% of retail sales. Unbelievable growth.
Really unbelievable. And when you look at 2020 alone and you look at bulk occupiers, so large deals that are getting done, e-commerce only, so only e-commerce related, was 25% of all the big deals across the U.S. in 2020.
That's right. So how does that translate to, industrial real estate? I think in looking at it, it's been an interesting situation because we've seen just a boom in huge deals and the small guys kind of getting crushed, right? Everybody wants to talk about Amazon. They're the master of fulfillment. So they've grown to 280 million feet, as reported by Colliers Research, in industrial space in North America by the end of 2020, doing 1,000 industrial deals in 2020. Crazy.
Amazing. You look at the top 10 occupiers for 2020. Certainly Amazon was number one by a long shot, right? But then you look at some of the other, industries. A lot of them are growing their e-commerce business, right? Home Depot, FedEx, Lowe's, DHL. Some of these groups are big time into e-commerce and investing the capital and into the technology within e-commerce and thriving because of it.
That's right. You named a lot of the companies, and then, specific industries, all things home improvement, because everybody's at home, even pet and garden, everybody's out, doing their, new gardens and redoing their lawns and whatnot. But the pet thing has been crazy. We've seen, a couple large pet food deals even in our local market here in Seattle get done. And then there was a report that pet adoptions were 12 times 2019 volume. So crazy. You got a new dog. I got a new dog.
Yes.
My dog's a lot more expensive to feed than yours.
Yes. Yes.
I have a Rottweiler at 125 pounds. I think your dog is like 9 pounds.
No. He's 12. He'll get to like 40.
My dog eats 12 pounds of food a day.
There's other issues that go along with that.
That's right, yes.
But it's funny. You think of pets. When we were getting our dog Wrigley, there were 65 people on the wait list to get a puppy through that particular breeder. So yes, that's crazy. But you mentioned home improvement as well. So we talked about Amazon being the number one occupier in 2020, again, by a long shot. But Home Depot was 2. Lowe's was 4, right?
Yep,
so that is certainly a trend that's going to continue, we think.
That's right. And we're seeing alcohol companies explode. They were reporting 28 to 33% increase in sales, and I know you were a big part of that.
Yeah. Well, I actually went dry for January.
Yes.
But I'm fully back now. Alcohol sales in the Seattle area will probably be up in February.
That's right.
We'll see.
So despite that, great news of, how COVID has impacted the big companies, we've definitely seen a trend of the haves and have-not here, where we're, you go to any major market in the U.S., go try to find a 1 million square foot building, and it's a problem. Try to find a 20, 30, 40,000 footer, and there's more and more supply. Where do you see that going?
So a couple things. Let's start with the big, chunks of space. That is in 2020, and this isn't just Seattle, this is across the country.
Mm-hmm.
We have never seen anywhere near the level that we saw of big deals getting done in 2020.
That's
and
right.
To your point, it's e-commerce related, it's fulfillment related, it's these brand new buildings, that are state of the art, and they're a little bit removed from the downtown core because that's where the land is, right? It's further south, for example, in our market. So unbelievable growth in the big box
For
business.
Sure.
And when we look at 2021, that doesn't show any signs of slowing down with the amount of deals that are out there in the marketplace. So record year in 20 probably be topped in 2021.
I think this year in the U.S. will be I would predict that we're going to have, not only in Seattle, but across the United States in major markets, this will be the biggest absorption year that we've seen.
Yes, definitely. And then I want to touch on that the smaller and mid-sized companies as well, because we talked about that. Certainly it's been a struggle for a lot of those companies. Those are the companies that have been impacted the hardest. And when you look at that kind of under 40,000 square foot market, right, it's been slow. And,
for sure.
And those companies, fortunately, I think will start to rebound. And I think I said on our last podcast, I think as we look at the second half of 2021, it's going to be kind of that middle market coming back, right? We got the vaccine that's getting more distributed widely, across the U.S. Election is behind us, right? So there's just more confidence, I think, from those smaller to mid-sized companies. And so hopefully when we look at what the second half looks like for 2021, we're going to see the continued boom of the big box market, but we're also going to see that middle market and small market come back. And as you know, the industrial segment, the industrial specialty is where everybody wants to be from an investment standpoint, right? So there's definitely been a flight to industrial. There's the industrial investors that are already trying to buy more and more industrial product. And then you have a bunch of groups coming over from office and multifamily and trying to get into industrial as well, which when you think about cap rates and what that's going to do, it should compress them, and we should see record, cap rate numbers here, record low cap rates, I should say, for industrial, and record pricing for industrial as we move into 2021.
Agreed. Should we move on to technology?
Let's do it. And why don't you kick us off with talking about the technologies that you see impacting our industrial space?
For sure. We've been studying this to find kind of what are the most innovative technologies that truly are going to be supply chain interrupters. And I think the top two that we're seeing in the coming years and even now are autonomous trucking and drones. And let's start with autonomous trucking. Now, first I'll say, I don't see either of these as just overinflated. Like a few years ago, everybody's talking, 3D printers. We're not going to need warehouses anymore because these 3D, I haven't seen any 3D printers, right?
Right.
This technology, and we're going to get into it, is already here. It's already impacting the supply chain, and I think it's going to revolutionize it. So start with autonomous trucks. They travel, first of all, 2.5 times faster each day than a driver of the truck who's limited to 10 hours. And obviously the autonomous truck doesn't have to stop. It can travel around the clock. Doesn't need to sleep, coffee breaks or bathroom breaks, right? It's just going. And so that fact alone is going to change that whole makeup of the trucking industry.
It definitely is. It's funny because when we started at Michigan State, one of the first things that we kind of learned about was this trend of autonomous trucking and how near it is to actually happening, and all the investment that's going into this, and
that's right,
how that's going to impact the supply chain going forward. As you know, my dad was a truck driver that drove across the country,
for sure.
And back then there weren't as many regulations as there are now put on truck drivers, right? You have, electronic logs that you got to fill in. Back then, he would just go, and kind of adjust as needed, right? And you can't do that anymore. But this takes it to a whole different level of it from an efficiency standpoint. You mentioned these trucks can just go. They can go. They don't have to stop for anything. And so that is going to have a huge impact on what the supply chain space looks like and these different supply chain companies and how they address that move forward.
Absolutely. And to the listeners out there that are saying, wait a minute, guys, I can't imagine this. This has been happening for a long time already. For example, Walmart has been running autonomous trucks from the ports of LA and Long Beach into Phoenix up Highway 10 since 2016. Okay, started out with pilot cars on either side, then went to a driver assist where for emergencies somebody's in there. But they've been running these trucks for 5 years on that highway. You've got multiple companies, including Amazon, already has certifications to test drive customer deliveries. This is already out there with ample companies. We're seeing it. We're obviously seeing it in the auto industry as well, with huge commitment the other day out of GM, indicating, I think, by 2030, all cars would be electric. And the other fact here is the industry is saying by 2028, the majority of long-haul truck drivers on the U.S. highways will be autonomous. Think about that from a power grid perspective, Bill. I mean, you get everybody coming home and then plugging their cars in, Teslas, Hummers, 1,000 horsepower Hummers, and all these semis turning into power grid. That will be interesting because coal fire, we don't think of coal here in Washington, but coal is still a predominant energy source powering electricity in the United States.
Yeah, it is going to be really interesting. And so when you think about that, between now and we aren't saying this is happening this year and everyone's converting this year, but between now and call it 2028, 2030, when a lot of these projections are looking at it, there's going to be a change to a lot of different areas, and it'll be interesting to see the companies that make the investments right into this technology and who doesn't, and then how they respond to it.
That's right. So then converting this to supply chain and industrial real estate, what does it mean? Well, if autonomous trucks can go so fast and are so much cheaper, that would mean that the port system might change. Like, you don't have to bring it in a particular port. It would potentially reduce rail and maybe even air cargo if trucking is nimble, quick, and efficient based on its ability to move faster and go 24 hours.
Exactly right. And, I think so the autonomous trucking thing is one that we are going to continue to be all over. We're actually doing a study on it right now that we'll be able to share, some more insights on it later. But one that is significantly going to impact our space and one that we will definitely continue to track. The other one, drones, right?
Mm-hmm.
You've looked hard at this. Talk a little bit about drones and the impact you think it's going to have.
For sure. A couple of years ago, I would have said, you're crazy to think we're going to look out a window and see like hundreds of drones flying around.
Yeah.
But Amazon, for example, did their first Prime delivery via drone in 2016, about 2 miles north of London in a rural area. And since then, they've been investing a massive amount of infrastructure in figuring out drones and last mile delivery. They're not the only ones, but you think about drones. First of all, drones right now, because of the battery pack that they have them in, they can only deliver 5 pounds. So you think, well, that's limiting. Well, just so happens that 75% of all Amazon Prime deliveries are under 5 pounds.
Yeah, that's an interesting stat. I did not know that until you said that. Yeah,
that's crazy. And then they're not the only ones jumping into it. You've got Amazon, who obviously already has some FAA certifications, but so does Google, so does UPS. These guys are in there trying to figure out how this technology is going to work, and they see it as working. They're already converting some of them to jet fuel because now you don't have to have that battery pack, right? And so they're designing these different drones with different types of energy sources to go further. Right now, with the battery pack ones, they can go 50 miles an hour up to 30 minutes out. And so it's there, and they're designing it. Right now, in the warehouses, a lot of large companies are using it for inventory.
Yep.
So you got these drones flying around all day long, counting inventory and knowing where all the packages are throughout the warehousing. So we're seeing it there. We're going to see it in delivery. I don't know when, but I don't think this is 10 years out. I think it's a few years out.
It's already happening inside the box, right? And it's being developed outside the box, right? You have the market leaders in the space that are investing, millions and millions of dollars into this. And, we're going to look back, 6-8 years from now and both, drones and autonomous trucking and say, wow, look at how far we've come in 6, 8, 10 years, right? And what, how differently the world will look.
That's right. So that is our two technology things. Bill, you want to touch on the one geopolitical issue we were going to talk about?
Yeah, I mean, I think, we were going to bring up Mexico and, with all the problems in China and in some of the supply chain issues, will Mexico rise up as, it's to a preferred, location for some of these groups?
It's a great question. They already have, as you know.
Yeah.
2019, Mexico became the United States' biggest trading partner. Why? To Bill's point, we've had a lot of problems with not only the supply chain, but then political issues with China. We've had a lot of issues the last couple of years. And so, I think manufacturers are looking very hard at Mexico because of its proximity. But bigger than that, the labor pool. So Mexico has an extremely young workforce that would be great trained for mid to low range manufacturing, light manufacturing, which is the majority of our goods. And so, it's close proximity and it's got a young workforce where both Canada and China have an aging workforce and a very limited labor pool in the years to come related with that level of manufacturing. So I think Mexico, in our lifetime, is not going to give up that position now as number one trading partner.
For sure. I mean, there's a lot of, key fundamentals that point to that, continuing. So it'll be another interesting thing to keep an eye on and to note.
For sure.
But it's really interesting. I think when you look at technology and bringing it back to the technology and how that impacts a lot of the industrial companies, the big companies are already investing in it, and they're going to continue to be the market leaders. What'll be really interesting to watch are the mid-size, the smaller companies. How are they adapting, right?
That's right.
How are they? Is there going to be more consolidation in the space? Are these larger companies going to buy a lot of these smaller and mid-sized companies? Because the ones that can adapt to the technology, the ones that are investing, are going to be the ones that win long term.
That's right. Yeah, it'll be an interesting thing to see play out. I agree with you that once everybody's vaccinated, you'll see a return of that small to mid-sized company because they're not fulfillment and e-commerce related. And so I think we'll see a rebound, and we need that rebound because obviously the U.S. economy is strong. A large part of it is built on the small business.
You bet. And obviously we always root hard for the small businesses, mid-sized companies, and just in having conversations with a lot of these different groups over the past few months, they are more bullish.
That's right.
And they believe in where their business is going. And so we're certainly optimistic on 2021 being an even better year from an industrial standpoint.
For sure. And in closing, when everybody listens to this, the Super Bowl will have been over. And once again, Tom Brady will remove some money out of your wallet, extract it, and hand it over to me.
We have a bet. I got the Chiefs. Am I giving you 3 points, or is it just straight up?
Straight up.
Straight up. Okay. My prediction of the Seahawks beating the Bills, I guess, didn't work out. But that is my prediction for next year. So Seahawks over the Bills and Chiefs by more than 3 on this one.
Very good. All right. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone.